Welcome to the Sci-Fi Evolution channel. On the day the Council watched humanity's courteous behavior suddenly disappear, Ambassador Zorn Helios of the Galactic Federation shifted uneasily in his seat, watching the human representative with a mixture of intrigue and growing concern. The Council chamber, usually filled with quiet murmurs as 15 different species engaged in interstellar diplomacy, fell into a strange silence. All 36 pairs of eyes in the room, belonging to various delegates with 2 to 6 visual organs each, were fixed on Isla Martel from Terra. "So you're saying," Kayla replied with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, "that after 6 cycles of negotiations, after we gave your council access to our quantum communication technology, after we helped protect your colonies on Xylos from the Void Swarm, you decided that humanity not ready for full membership yet?" Helios cleared his throat 3 times, as if gathering his thoughts. The temperature control systems in his exosuit seemed to be malfunctioning, possibly due to the tension in the room. Ambassador Kayla felt a drop of sweat trickle down her neck, and something in his tone triggered her ancestral instincts. Ambassador Kayla began cautiously. "The Council appreciates Terra's contribution, we really do, but certain behavior among people has raised concerns." The leader of the Council, Czar Xander, a formidable figure with hands shimmering like oil on water, leaned forward. "Perhaps if you could help us understand why your species seems to switch between extreme politeness and anxious aggression. Our cultural observers report that humans can switch between these states at an alarming rate." Kayla nodded politely, adjusting her formal diplomatic attire. "I understand," she said. "What observations led to this conclusion?" The delegate, a plankton-like creature from the methane oceans of Callisto Prime, staggered forward. 3 solar cycles ago, a human trading mission landed on Callisto Prime. A representative named Alex Gray was negotiating with the Goris merchants when they tried to raise prices. In the midst of the negotiations, he suddenly smiled, excused himself, and retreated to another room. There he delivered a powerful blow to the wall, causing fractures of several fingers. However, he returned to the negotiations with a smile, as if nothing had happened. "Alex is just like that," Kayla said with a light laugh. "He has anger management issues, which can be quite embarrassing, but it's not just Alex." Weber interjected, Delegate Krillvox, and his mustache twitched nervously. "Our psychological profile of your species indicates that you all have a unique ability to contain and suppress anger and emotions in a way that no other intelligent species can." Kayla's smile remained unchanged, but Zorn Helios noticed how her right hand tightened slightly around her data pad, and her third heart began to beat faster. During his long career as a diplomat spanning 7 centuries, he has developed a keen eye for warning signs in multiple species. Something was wrong. The Council's ambassador, Czar Xander, continued to ignore the warning signals that Zorn Helios was picking up. "We have studied the recordings of Terra's AR entertainment broadcasts, and it seems that your species is celebrating this transition from politeness to violence, which you call a breakdown or losing your temper or explosion. We are deeply concerned that your diplomatic corps may act under a similar deterrent, which could lead to failure." Kayla tilted her head slightly, as if to indicate that their application was rejected because people sometimes get angry. Czar Xander stated, "We are rejecting your application because you hide your anger under a veneer of politeness until it comes out. The Council requires all member species to engage in open and honest emotional communication." I watched as Kayla nodded thoughtfully, and then said, "This decision is final." The board voted, and Czar Xander confirmed that there were 37 votes in favor of postponing the application and 5 against. "We advise humanity to spend another 50 years developing emotional control before submitting a new application." Kayla carefully put down her data pad. For 50 years, she blinked once, just a blink on a cosmic scale. Czar Xander magnanimously said, Your kind is young. Make the most of this time. Zorn watched with growing concern as Kayla's breathing subtly changed and her pupils slightly dilated. These were subtle signals that his species had evolved to detect before a predator struck. He tried to catch Xander's eye, signaling caution, but the council leader had already moved on to the next item on the agenda. If we now turn to the issue of resource allocation in the Orion sector. Kayla's voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the hall like a plasma blade. Xander blinked all 6 eyes in surprise. "I'm sorry," I said. Kayla stood up, adjusting her uniform. "We're not moving on. We're going to review this decision right now." A faint murmur ran through the hall. No one interrupted the council meetings. It was simply impossible. "Ambassador Kayla," Xander said, "perhaps this reaction is a prime example of the emotional instability that worries us." She smiled, and this time her expression sent a shiver through Zorn Helios' exosuit. "Oh, I'm being very polite right now, council leader, believe me. What you're seeing is still a very human diplomatic face. Then we appreciate your restraint." Xander dismissed the question for now, but Kayla's smile remained unchanged. "Let me explain something about people that your cultural observers might have overlooked. We don't hide our anger because we are deceitful. We hide it because we try to be kind." The room was silent again, and even the life support systems seemed to have gone quiet. However, Kayla continued, picking up her data pad and casually scrolling through it. "People have long realized that our full emotional spectrum can overwhelm other species, so we have developed what we call a courtesy mode within ourselves. It's our way of being attentive to the rest of the world. You, Zorn Helios, have felt a primitive warning in your mind. Maybe we should take a little break." "No pause," Kayla replied politely. "I think it's time for the council to see the consequences of disabling human courtesy, especially since you just made an offer. A decision that affects the future of 11 billion people, without considering our point of view." The hall was filled with noise from the disturbing conversation. Zorn Helios looked at his fellow delegates, trying to see if anyone else was aware of the gravity of the situation. They were about to witness something unprecedented. A human diplomat deliberately turning off his emotional defenses. Despite his concern, Zorn Helios felt a spark of curiosity. What happens when Ambassador Kayla's courtesy mode finally turns off? The council chamber's life support systems were struggling to cope with the growing tension. Several delegates activated personal comfort fields, shimmering bubbles of altered atmosphere that helped to cope with stress. Zorn Helios would have liked to hide in one of them, but as the senior ambassador, appearances had to be preserved. "Council leader," Ambassador Kayla remarked, "your emotional expression is recorded in the official protocol." "It's useless." Kayla laughed, but it was not the polite, diplomatic chuckle they had heard from her during the last months of negotiations, but a sincere, undisguised laugh that made several delegates flinch. "That's your problem, Xander," she said. "You think it's an emotional explosion." She pointed at her face. "That's just me saying it, without any pretense. The real emotional explosion hasn't started yet." Delegate Krill Vox's antennae were now fully pressed against his head, which was a sign of deep shock for his appearance. "Ambassador Kayla, please consider the diplomatic implications." "Indeed," Kayla replied casually, leaning against the podium. "I think about it very clearly. Do you want to learn something intriguing about people? When we are polite, our thoughts become hazy. We hold back, we doubt. But when politeness disappears," she snapped her fingers, the sound echoing through the room. "Clear thinking is an evolutionary fight or flight response. Running away and all that." Zorn remarked when Kayla's behavior changed. The diplomat's cautious bearing gave way to something more primitive, more assertive. Her gestures have become broader, her voice more lively. It seemed like another personality had appeared. "Let's look at what happened here." Kayla continued. You denied humanity membership based on erroneous cultural assessments. These estimates would be ridiculous if they weren't so dangerous. You have ignored our scientific contributions, our military assistance during the Void Swarm crisis, and our sincere attempts to negotiate. Kayla started pacing, and Zorn noticed how the hands of several guards surreptitiously reached for their weapons. Kayla noticed it too and smiled at them. Not a diplomatic smile, but a predatory smile. Don't worry, gentlemen. I'm not going to attack anyone. That's not how it works. How exactly does it work, Czar Xander? She asked, dropping all pretense of politeness. Simply put, when people abandon their polite behavior, violence becomes the most likely response. Cruelty comes first. So let me be very honest with you, Council Leader. She approached the raised platform, ignoring the warning sounds as she crossed the security line. Your decision is wrong. It is not dictated by sincere concern for emotions or transparency. It is dictated by fear. You are afraid of humans because we are a complex species that you cannot understand. Xander's voice echoed through the speakers. I'm just getting started, Kayla countered. Let's discuss the real reason for this decision. It's about competing for resources. Terra controls 70% of the galactic quantum communication networks. We have the best terraforming technology, and our army, although small, has proven surprisingly effective against threats. Your combined forces fought. The room was completely silent now, and Zorn Helios could hear the faint hum of Kayla's wings, a reflex reaction to stress. Kayla mentioned the unspoken, the political calculations behind the diplomatic decisions that had to remain unspoken. It's not about our emotions, Kayla continued. It's about power. You're using our emotional instability as an excuse to keep humanity on the sidelines while you figure out how to replicate our technology. Zara Xander's skin was rapidly changing colors, going from iridescent blue to angry purple. These accusations are absurd, she said. Kayla brought up the data on her tablet, projecting it onto the main screen. Here's an interesting correlation. Every time humanity shared a technological breakthrough, the Council raised a new cultural concern about our readiness. 6 times in the last 3 cycles. What a wonderful coincidence. Zorn Helios felt a growing sense of unease as Kayla continued to analyze the situation. We will convene a smaller committee to discuss these issues. We will no longer have private meetings where nothing is decided. It's going to happen right here, right now, in front of every delegate. Zorn Helios, Kayla said. Do you know what's really ironic about this situation? People developed a courtesy regime because we thought it would help us integrate better into galactic society. We've studied your cultures, studied your communication styles, and changed our behavior to make you feel comfortable. And now you're using that mindfulness against us. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably. Zorn Helios saw how Kayla's words hit home with an unpleasant precision. Let me tell you what happens next. We will convene a smaller committee to discuss these issues. There will be no more private meetings where nothing is decided. It's going to happen right here, right now, in front of everyone. Continuing my speech, now with deadly calm, I intend to leave this cell today and contact Terra. I propose to immediately stop the exchange of all quantum communication technologies. In addition, I suggest that we review our military assistance agreements with the Xylos colonies. Finally, I suggest that humanity begin negotiations on bilateral agreements with individual species, rather than acting through a central authority. The room exploded as the delegates stood up, shouting questions and objections. Czar Xander was desperately trying to restore order, his 6 eyes wide with alarm. Kayla stood motionless in the midst of the chaos she had created. Zorn Helios watched with a sense of surprise as Kayla effortlessly returned to her diplomatic demeanor. Her posture straightened, her expression softened, and her voice became more even. A day to correct their mistake. One day they had to find a way to fix their mistake. It was an unforeseen and scandalous event. Total disregard for council protocol. Zarzander gesticulated wildly as he paced around the emergency meeting room. Only the most senior delegates attended this crisis session, and the atmosphere was so tense that it could have been cut with a molecular blade. Zorn sipped a soothing drink through the nutrient port of his exosuit. With all due respect, Council Leader, I believe that focusing on protocol violations is overlooking a more important issue, Zarzander said, his 6 eyes blinking out of sync, which was a sign of his extreme agitation. Ambassador Kayla just demonstrated why our assessment of humanity was wrong, Zorn replied. We blamed them for unpredictable emotional instability, but what we observed was precisely controlled communication designed to achieve specific diplomatic goals. Delegate Clint added, we need to take a step back and rethink our approach. Her gelatinous form trembled with tension as she threatened us. She's practically declared an economic war, hasn't she? Asked Krillvox, his antenna now deployed as his initial fear gave way to analytical thought. She outlined the potential consequences of our decision, consequences that, frankly, any of us could have foreseen if we had bothered to model the scenario. There was silence in the hall as the delegates considered this. Zorn Helios opened the recordings of the meeting on his data terminal, professionally reviewing Kayla's explosion. He monitored her vital signs during the confrontation, displaying biometric readings from the security systems. Her heart rate was elevated but stable, her breathing was controlled, and her stress hormones were elevated, but within the normal parameters for her species. It wasn't someone losing control. It was a calculated diplomatic move. Zarzander sank into his ceremonial chair, his skin pale to excellent and incredibly powerful. Clint chimed in. Think about what Ambassador Kayla achieved in less than half an hour. She disrupted our entire schedule, forced an emergency meeting, exposed political machinations that we had been hiding for years, and established a strong negotiating position for a renegotiation. The wings of the Vox trill hummed. Thoughtfully, without any threat of violence, without even raising our voices above the conversational level, we now have less than 18 hours to respond. Zarzander said dejectedly. Suddenly, the communication device made a sound, and he checked the message, feeling his 3 hearts skip a beat at the same time. The timeline may have just been significantly shortened. The government of Terra has issued a statement expressing concern about the Council's decision. They are asking all human ships and personnel in Council space to prepare for a possible return to Terra territory. The hall exploded with a wave of disturbing discussions again. Zarzander had to strike his ceremonial staff 4 times to restore order. We won't really leave the Council space, Clink said, his form now shaking so much that small fragments were separating from his main body. The economic turmoil will hurt us as much as it will them, Rozak asked quietly. Humanity has demonstrated remarkable self-sufficiency, even by engaging in intergalactic trade. They produce 90% of their own food, generate their own energy, and independently produce all major technologies. Meanwhile, Zorn has 37 Council worlds that now depend on humans for their existence. The Xylos colonies are mostly protected by human warships, and the 6 main trade routes depend on human navigation systems. These systems have become indispensable, but we haven't been paying attention to them, Krillvox said aloud. No, Grak corrected. We've been paying attention, but we've been focusing on the wrong thing. We were so worried about their emotional expressions that we didn't notice their strategic positioning. Zarazander's complexion returned as he processed this information. So what do we do now? Simply fulfilling their demands will make the Council look weak. The Council already looks weak, Zorn Helios said bluntly, adopting a bit of human directness. Ambassador Kayla has identified this weakness. Our choice now is to face her honestly or continue pretending. A new warning has appeared on the main screen. Zorn Helios read it and felt a chill run through him. It seems that humanity is not waiting for its deadline. Human merchants in the Orion Arm began to stop transactions, citing system maintenance. Human diplomats on 12 planets have requested temporary leave for consultations, and their warships in the Xylo sector have begun what they call routine exercises, effectively establishing a defensive perimeter around their main facilities. They are preparing to retreat without actually retreating. Grok said something that sounded almost like admiration. Another example of their control, showing us the potential consequences without fully realizing them. Xander sank deeper into his chair. "We seriously underestimated these individuals," he said. "Indeed," Zorn Helios agreed. "But perhaps not for the reasons we initially assumed. The problem is not that people are overly emotional or unpredictable. The problem is that they are much more strategic than we have given them credit for." Vox's antennae twitched. A pattern began to emerge, offering a new perspective. What if that was the main goal from the very beginning? What if humans have developed diplomatic behavior specifically to be underestimated by other species? There was silence in the room as this notion took hold. Took finally stated, "That's impossible. This would mean widespread deception on their part, covering all their interactions with galactic civilization." "Not cheating," Grok corrected. "There is a difference." Zorn Helios nodded, thinking about the history of Terra. They developed in isolation on a planet with a diverse environment and numerous cultures. They had to become experts at adapting their behavior to coexist with each other, not to mention the aliens. "So, what should we do?" Xander asked, dropping any pretense of leadership. Zorn Helios stood up. "I propose to do something unprecedented. I suggest we turn off our polite mode and interact with humanity for real. We recognize our shortcomings. The Council has never acknowledged its strategic position or participated in genuine negotiations. In fact, he never admitted his mistakes." Skirting board protest. "Perhaps it's time for us to learn from the example of humanity," Zorn Helios replied. "They have demonstrated that a controlled, genuine approach can be more effective than a strict diplomatic protocol." Xander was silent for a long time, his skin changing colors as he considered this advice. Finally, he looked up at Ambassador Kayla and said, "I request her immediate return to the Council chamber, but not for a formal meeting." He paused, then added, "Invite her to what people call a candid conversation." As the delegates dispersed to prepare, Zorn Helios found himself experiencing an unfamiliar emotion, a mixture of anticipation and respect. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, he was not sure what would happen next, and for some reason this uncertainty was felt. As if in a procession, Ambassador Kayla returned to the Council chamber exactly 3 hours after her dramatic departure. This time, however, the room was transformed. The traditional seating arrangement has been replaced by a circular configuration, without the usual hierarchical elevation for senior members. The environmental settings were also adjusted to levels comfortable for Terra, rather than a compromise that subtly favored the biology of the more established members. Zorn Helios, observing these details, approved. Xander, taking the offer of sincerity seriously, greeted Ambassador Kayla, rising from his seat. His formal attire was replaced with more casual clothes, another symbolic gesture. "Thank you for coming back so quickly," he said. Kayla took a quick, appraising look around the room, taking in the changes. "An interesting redesign," said the council leader. "It almost feels like you're trying to make people feel at home." "That's exactly the intention," Xander confirmed. "However, I suspect that your keen observation will not be shaken by simple environmental changes." A slight smile touched the corner of Kayla's lips, acknowledging the gesture. "Nevertheless, they are appreciated. Symbolism is of great importance in diplomacy, as we all know." She took the offered seat, her posture relaxed but attentive. Zorn found himself studying her with renewed interest. Was it the diplomatic mask, the polite regime they were talking about, or was it the real Isla Martell? Perhaps the most disturbing revelation was that both versions could be true at the same time. "I'm guessing this isn't a typical council meeting," Kayla said, looking around at the reduced number of people present. "No," Zarzander confirmed. "That's what my advisor suggested. We call it a frank conversation. I believe that people appreciate it," Kayla admitted. "Although I'm curious what prompted such a sudden interest in human preferences in conversation." Zarazander's skin was rippling with colors that Zorn recognized as indicators of discomfort. "And the outcome of your presentation today prompted a thorough reassessment of our position towards humanity." "My presentation?" Kayla raised her eyebrows. "You mean when I turned off polite mode?" "Yes," said Zarzander. "It was instructive." Kayla let out a laugh. "To be honest, that's one way of putting it, and now you want to negotiate better terms. An attempt to cancel a 50-year delay period without losing face." "No," Zorn Helios interjected, earning a surprised look from Zarzander. "We want to understand." Kayla turned her head towards him, tilting it slightly. "Understand what, Ambassador Zorn Helios?" "Everything that we misunderstood before," he replied. "This polite regime that you described is the strategic control behind what we mistakenly perceived as emotional volatility. The way humanity positioned itself in galactic politics. So far, we've been focused on exploring the wrong aspects of your behavior." Kayla watched him for a long time, then looked around at the other delegates. "Absolutely," Zarzander confirmed. "The Council has been functioning for centuries based on certain assumptions about diplomatic protocol and behavior. Your actions today challenge these assumptions in a way that we cannot ignore." Kayla leaned back in her chair, thinking about it. "So we're not talking about our membership application anymore?" "On the contrary," Grok rumbled from his seat at the far end of the circle. "It's about your membership, but maybe not in the way you're suggesting." The ancient reptilian ambassador leaned forward, his scales reflecting the light. "The Council has existed for more than 12,000 years. During this time, we have integrated numerous species, resolved numerous conflicts, and established protocols that have ensured relative peace in the three galactic arms." He paused, fixing Kayla with his unwavering gaze. "And yet, in less than 3 standard cycles of interaction with humanity, we find ourselves thinking about the fundamental aspects of our operations. This is unprecedented." Kayla's expression remained calm, but Zorn Helios noticed a slight increase in her pulse rate on his biometric scanner, a sign of genuine curiosity or surprise. "We're naturally curious," she said. "Finally, we have people. I mean, we tend to question systems rather than just accept them." "Yes," Krillvox agreed, his mustache waving thoughtfully. "And this quality, which we initially mistook for immaturity or rebellion, may actually be your species' most valuable contribution to the Council." Kayla's eyebrows shot up. "Are you suggesting that we reconsider our previous decision not only to approve humanity's membership application, but also to create a new position on the Council dedicated specifically to evaluating and innovating systems?" There was silence in the room as Kayla considered this unexpected proposal. She thought for a while, considering the consequences. "Indeed, perhaps that's why we need the point of view of humanity," Zarzander admitted, his skin changing color, indicating the level of recognition. "Our methods have been effective, but inflexibility can lead to problems." Kayla thought about it for a while. "Of course, I will need to consult with the central government of Terra. We would like to discuss the conditions that we foresaw, as mentioned by Zarzander, and we are ready to negotiate in good faith, starting with the immediate restoration of membership." Kayla insisted on considering this issue, and Zarzander agreed that an official announcement would be made at the next full council session. Kayla nodded in agreement, then looked directly at Zorn Helios. "You know, Ambassador, I think you were the only one who really understood what was going on today. Zorn Helios felt his scales turn slightly red at the unexpected confession. I've studied human behavior a lot, and it's fascinating. Now I'm curious. Does the Council have its own version of polite mode? Is there a set of behaviors that you have adopted to make interaction smoother, but which may limit genuine communication? The delegates exchanged awkward glances. Grok finally replied, Ambassador Kayla, the Council does not have a specific set of behaviors for polite communication. However, we strive to maintain respectful and professional behavior during discussions. The Council has functioned in what could be called a courteous manner for 12,000 years. Maybe it's time to think about turning it off from time to time. Kayla laughed heartily, which instantly changed the atmosphere in the room. I suggest we approach this gradually. Humanity has learned the hard way that a complete rejection of politeness can have explosive consequences. Then perhaps, Zarzander suggested, the role of humanity could be to teach the Council how to find this balance, when to adhere to diplomatic protocol, and when to participate more directly in cultural exchange, as on a two-way road. Kayla considered this idea. Zorn Helios experienced an unfamiliar feeling, optimism about the future of the Council. During his long diplomatic career, he had witnessed numerous minor changes in the galactic order, but it felt different. I believe, he said, that today marks a turning point in the history of the Council, a day when we begin to transcend our own. In a more courteous manner, I want to reveal to you the truths that you were too courteous to recognize on your own.